There's a certain kind of loneliness that doesn't always look like loneliness. It's quiet, invisible. It hides behind laughter, behind productivity, behind the phrase, "I'm just busy lately." But deep down, there's an ache that never quite goes away. It's not the loneliness of being physically alone. It's the loneliness of realizing that no one really knows you. That if you disappeared for a while, most people wouldn't notice until much later. That if something incredible or terrible happened to you, you wouldn't know who to tell. It's the kind of silence that grows inside you slowly. Not loud, not desperate, but constant. And eventually, it starts to change the way you think, the way you see yourself, the way you move through the world. People often assume that those who have no friends are cold, antisocial, or uninterested. But that's rarely the full truth. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they care too deeply. They observe too much. They notice every micro shift in tone, every subtle change in energy, every half-hearted smile that doesn't reach the eyes. And after a while, they start to retreat, not because they hate people, but because connection starts to feel unsafe. Psychologically, this experience changes the brain. When you go too long without social bonds, your brain begins to interpret isolation as a form of threat. It triggers the same regions associated with physical pain. That's why loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally. It actually hurts physically. Your heart rate changes. Your sleep becomes lighter. Your mind starts scanning for danger in places where there isn't any. Because the human brain evolved in tribes. To be alone for too long was once a death sentence. Yet today, you can be surrounded by thousands of people online and still feel utterly unseen. Because attention isn't connection, and validation isn't intimacy. There's a difference between being known and being understood. Most people who have no friends didn't choose that path overnight. It happens slowly, through small disappointments that pile up over the years. You share something personal and someone laughs. You trust someone with a secret and they use it against you. You try to open up, but you feel misunderstood. Eventually, your brain learns a lesson. It's safer not to try. So you stop reaching out. You stop initiating. You start telling yourself you prefer solitude. And at first, you might even believe it, because solitude can feel peaceful for a while. It gives you control. It gives you space. But the truth is, after enough time, solitude turns from healing to haunting. Because deep down, humans are wired for connection. Even the most independent soul still craves to be seen, to be mirrored, to be felt by someone else's presence. But when you've gone years without that, something strange begins to happen inside. Your internal dialogue becomes louder than the world around you. You start talking to yourself, not out loud, but in thoughts that never end. You start replaying old memories, old friendships, old betrayals, wondering where it all went wrong. Sometimes you convince yourself it's your fault. Sometimes you blame the world. But most of the time, it's neither. It's just the complex dance between human psychology and human pain. There's a concept in psychology called learned social helplessness. When you've tried to connect so many times and failed that you unconsciously stop trying altogether, your brain associates reaching out with rejection. So even when you meet good people later, kind, open, understanding, your guard stays up. You might tell yourself you're fine being alone, but somewhere deep down, you're still yearning for that one person who gets it. That one person who doesn't need explanations. And yet, the more you want it, the more impossible it feels to find. Because loneliness has a way of making you feel unworthy of friendship. It whispers things like, "You're too much," or "You're not interesting enough." It tells you people have better things to do. Eventually, you start believing it. You start rejecting yourself before anyone else gets the chance to. You isolate, not out of pride, but out of protection. But here's what's fascinating. Loneliness doesn't always look sad. Sometimes people without friends appear completely fine. They smile, they work, they create, They even post happy photos online. But deep down, they live in two realities: the one the world sees and the one they feel. They've built a version of themselves designed to survive without connection. But that version often feels hollow, like they're watching their own life from the outside. It's easy to judge people who have no friends, to label them as weird, aloof, or difficult. But if you listen closely to their stories, you'll often find a thread of quiet heartbreak. Moments where they gave too much of themselves to people who didn't care enough to stay. And over time, that heartbreak shapes their entire identity. They begin to associate intimacy with danger, vulnerability with regret. So they learn to live without it. But the cost of that adaptation is high. Because without genuine friendship, your world becomes smaller. Your emotions start echoing in your own mind. There's no one to challenge your perspective, no one to soften your thoughts. Psychologists say prolonged social isolation can reduce empathy, not because people stop caring, but because they stop practicing emotional exchange. Empathy is like a muscle. When it's not used, it weakens. So, people who live alone for long periods sometimes become emotionally numb, not by choice, but by necessity. It's the brain's way of protecting itself from the pain of unmet connection. And yet, something paradoxical happens. The very people who have no friends often crave deeper friendship than anyone else. They think about connection more deeply. They analyze it. They romanticize it. They look for meaning in every small interaction, every passing smile. Because when something is rare, you start to treasure even the smallest moments of it. So if you're listening to this and you feel unseen, forgotten, or left behind, remember, you're not broken. You're just in the middle of becoming whole. This silence you're living through isn't punishment. It's preparation. Because one day, someone will meet you and feel peace, and they'll never know how much darkness you had to walk through to bring that light. Until then, keep walking, keep breathing, keep being kind, even when no one sees it. Because in a world that moves too fast, your quiet strength is your greatest rebellion. You are not alone. You're just early.